Let's do it again. Let's do it again. I'm Ken Ochonogo. You're welcome to Channel Sport on Sunday. And what else do you want to do? The giant of Africa, Nigeria, 1980. Christian Chukwu led them there. It took how many years more? 14 years, 80 to 94. Before, yes, we call him the big boss, Stephen Okechukwu Keshi. And it was in Tunisia in 1994 that we got the second one. Fast forward to 2013, he now led the team to South Africa, and that is number 3. But then 2013 to 2023, wow, that is another 10 years. We are itching because Egypt has how many? 7? Cameroon? Ghana? No. We need to be number 1. And for us to get there, we must win more than Ghana. We must win more than Cameroon and neighbors here, who constantly beat us and beat us and beat us. Nobody will forget that 2000, Ghana, Nigeria 2000, when they did it right here at home, rubbing it on our faces that, they are that strong. But then, this is a new campaign. This is a focus that we say we want to win. I don't know if we can. What else you need? Is it from outside or inside support? But we are believing ourselves and said, let's do it again. Probably with this, if the chorus, if it gets to the players, if it gets to the coaching crew, to say yes, we are Nigerians and we must do the impossible. And probably in Cote d'Ivoire, we were in Cote d'Ivoire in 1984. Yes, remember? And yes, that was when the younger Keshi was just coming up. Patrick Okala in goal. The Olukome brothers. They call it the Modakake High Chief. He led that team there in 84. But then it was the Cameroonians that showed us the way. We scored first. We thought it was going to be humble. But then it turned out to be something else. But Theo is in the house. We call him the Catalan. Theo, how are you?
Very good.
Yeah,
good to be back.
I love your outfits today.
Thank you very much. Special editions. I thought just go special,
All right, this is special edition. He says. But before we start on the big topic of the day, the German team, the German under-17 team, are now the world champions. They beat the French team on penalties. Coming back after dropping 2 goals up and coming down, and then before you knew it was 2-2. And then they went on penalties. But that, Theo, we shared something before we came on air.
Yeah.
That Nigeria won the maiden edition of this tournament. Yeah. That was in 1985 in Moscow. You understand? And who did we beat in the final? It was the German, West Germany. They called that West and East Germany. And then when the French won their first championship, who did they beat? They beat Nigeria to win it. And right now, the Germans are winning their first championship. And who are they beating? They are beating the French. Yeah. So we beat the Germans. Yeah. The Germans beat the French, and the French beat us. So I mean, it is a roller coaster. But these are the kids of tomorrow, the future stars that we'll be watching. But right there in Indonesia, it was the Germans that that ruled it. They are also the first team to win both the European Championship and also.
And coincidentally, they beat the same team.
They beat the same team, and then they were scoring the captain was supposed to score that. You talked about the game.
Yes.
You talked about the game. We thought that was going to be the winning penalty. Yes. He lost, and then the keeper, the keeper also saved the other one.
The French goalkeeper, watching him in the heroics yesterday, just started, they couldn't win it. That reminded me of when you see young players coming up. Then you look at the likes of Andrea Onana and the mistakes that they're making. It's really, really sad. But looking at the game yesterday, it was almost like a deja vu moment for France. Yeah. Because in their semi-final game against the Malians, Mali was leading them by a goal to nil. And Mali got a red card, and then they came back and they went on to win.
2 goals.
2 goals to 1. And then the Germans were leading. And then they
2 goals.
2 goals. 2 goals up. No, it's actually 2-1. Yeah. So it's actually 2-1. And then they got a red card. And after the red card, because I know they scored in the 27th minute and the 51st minute, and in the 53rd minute, France, stage that got one back. And the next thing, there's a red card. I'm like, okay, is this happening all over again? And they went on and they got the equalizing goal. And you could tell that they dragged it on for as long as they could. The French pushed and pushed and pushed. But the Germans, deserving champions yesterday. I saw, children celebrating. It was just Just give me moments of the Channel Kids Cup. Very good.
Channel Kids Cup is saying we'll be back. We'll be back. But today, I would have loved to look at the EPL and also the MPFL. But today, like we said, it is a special edition because it is not always you have the numero, the man who presides over sport in Nigeria, to be our guest. So basically, we are cutting short the MPFL. It took place yesterday, and then the EPL for you fans. I know the Arsenal fans, you are happy. You are setting, you lay down the marker. But we want to go to Abuja. We want to go to Abuja if we are ready, because it is an honor and a privilege for us to have him in the house. And the person that is the Minister of Sports Development. They call him Joe. Joe is, I don't know, I love that Joe, but he is John, not the Baptist this time, but probably John the Baptist of Nigerian sports. Probably that's when he started, but there is Owen and Eno, and that makes him Joe. And like we said, it was an upgrade because we're already having DDD before we're not having AE. We have the Dare, we have the Dalong, and we are having an Eno. So we are moving up. Honorable Minister, you are welcome to Channel Sport on Sunday.
Thank you. Good afternoon for welcoming me here.
Good afternoon. All right. He's soft spoken, but you are going to get it. He's a man of action. I took my time. We took our time here to look at him. I want to ask you this, because it's a double-barrel question to start with. When you were being appointed, I don't know if you ever thought of being the Minister of Sport, that you are going to get this portfolio. But that is part one. And part two, eventually when you were made the Minister of Sport, it started like a buzz. He knows nothing about sports. I mean, why did they brought him here? So it is not for me to ask whether you know something or you know nothing about sports. But I looked at, where you were coming from. 2 times member of the House of Assembly, 2 times member of the House of Representatives, a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. I mean, in those areas that you have been in, you did discuss sport in the House of Assembly, did they discuss sport at the National Assembly? So, Honorable Minister, how did you feel being appointed the Minister of Sport for Sports Development, the Minister of Sport Development in Nigeria? And do you know anything about sports? I don't know. I just want to ask you this.
I didn't. The truth is, I didn't see it coming.
Okay.
But that's where it ends. I mean, it's at some point, at some level, you must also be prepared and ready for whatever responsibility comes your way. So I mean, and let me correct this. I did 1 term in the House of Assembly.
Okay.
Of Cross River State, 3 terms in the House of Reps, and a term in the Senate.
Okay.
So I mean, that said, I think. You talk about whether in these previous engagements, whether I ever did sports, whether we ever, you don't need to do sports in, particularly for you to follow sports or for you to have a passion for sports or for you to be a sports enthusiast. It's, while in my previous callings, I may not have been actively involved in, let's say, maybe club football in terms of football, let's say any brand of athletics, let's say, I remained, a sports follower. There was little you could say about sports that at least I won't have what to say. So it's, and for me, that's all it required. At this level, you're also appointed to provide leadership. And I think that, after some level of academics, after some level of training and experience, you should be able to cope. And cope, and cope well. So it's and this is 100 days plus, this job. So perhaps the bit that I didn't know because I wasn't either part of the sports community, either making sports commentaries, either actively involved. I believe that I've more than had enough time, to now learn that remaining bit, and therefore, as Minister of Sports Development, I believe that that's the portfolio that I have to run on, and that's the commitment that I have, and the job that I have to deliver on this portfolio, on this mandate.
Okay, I love that because that is the next question I want to ask you. 100 days. You've not been baptized. John the Baptist have not been baptized by Nigerian sports. So let's take it this way. What have you seen on ground in terms of challenges of the sport ministry? You've also been looking probably comparatively, other climes, what do they have vis-a-vis, what do we need to do? But what did you find on ground, and how challenging do you think this task is in trying to take Nigerian sports to El Dorado?
Well, it's what have I found on ground? I mean, my imagination and expectations in terms of, the passion, the excitement, and the love that Nigerians have for sports hasn't been disappointed even in the least. I mean, this is one portfolio and one sector that you are never in want of people who are willing, to give advice, to offer suggestions, and all of that. What becomes the issue is what kind of advice you're getting. Is it honest enough or not, that can help you? I mean, the advice you get, are they genuine? I mean, all of that is at play. I mean, it's a few, at the very beginning, when I tried to do some visitations of, let's say, the sporting, facilities, like when I went to Lagos. I mean, I was greeted as if I was arriving a campaign venue, as if, reminded again of the build-up to the 2023 elections, with huge crowds, excited crowds, and all of that. But in terms of the challenges, I find, very huge challenges. I mean, before this program started, you were talking about the finals of the Under-17 World Cup that was won, yesterday, by Germany. You talked about Germany and France. You talked about the very beginning when Nigeria won this cup. Now, the two countries that were beating ourselves back to back, at this point, it is Nigeria that beats Germany. At the other point, it's Germany that beats France. And at the other point, it is this, that. These two countries are still, appearing at the finals. Yeah. And then Germany winning. Nigeria could not even qualify for this World Cup. I mean, in itself, it shows you, it introduces you, it gives a glimpse of the state of even the game of football. A tournament that we won about back-to-back, even 3 times or whatever, we couldn't even qualify. So it's I find that, the test and the desire of the people is huge, but the opportunities and, the growth of the sector, the same problems, that bedeviled the sports sector 20 years, 25 years or more ago, are the same teaching problems that we're still having to confront with today. I mean, the challenge of infrastructure. I mean, it's whether you're talking about elite sports in terms of our athletes that on a regular basis are in competition with the rest of the sub-region, with the region and with the world. I mean, they are competing with people that are managed from better facilities. And because of the dearth of facilities and infrastructure, we are unable to hold back and to keep our own sporting assets. Whether you're talking about grassroots sports to develop the early talents enough that can transit to elite sports and all that. People, our young men and women, lack the facilities and the infrastructure that can get them early introduced enough to all of these. So these problems are still there. These problems are still matters that we need to confront. Whether you're talking about the issue of the welfare of athletes, welfare of our sportsmen and women, either those that have retired, that did us proud in their heydays, and those that are currently in fashion, and how well they are taken care of. These teaching problems remain and need to be, to be tackled. Whether I'm talking about the fact that as a sector, this is one sector whose outcomes are easily measurable. The outcomes, it is in the sports sector that in the middle of January, the country is going to be locked up in the Cup of Nations with the rest of the region. The rest of the continent. It is in this sector that, by March, we're going to go to Ghana for the All-African Games, competing again with Africa. It is in this sector that by July, we're going to compete with the rest of the world in terms of the Olympics. So the outcomes are are very immediately measurable, and whether as a people, whether as a country, we are giving enough attention because of the number of times that we have to compete with the rest of the world or not is, anybody's guess. So it's, so these are the matters and these are the issues. And the last 100 and 1 or 2 days, has been full of, activities, full of, content, people willing to say this or say that. We've gone through a period, of course, we have had 2 matches in terms of our next World Cup, qualifiers. The extent of disappointment amongst Nigerians very easily palpable. So I mean, these are the matters. And I think that it remains work in progress. And the hope is that we will, by the grace of God, have the ability to confront this, one by one, and be able to successfully do so.
Okay. You've taken us through your thought processes and then your understanding of the terrain. I can say that. But let me ask you, I think most of us will be wrong to say you are a minister of sports, because it is Minister of Sports Development. How we take that development is what I want to ask you here. Honorable Minister, 54 countries are in Africa, 54 nations in Africa. As we speak, 53 of them are trying to qualify for the World Cup. Out of that 53, 17 of those African countries don't have standard pitches in their own country. 7 of those countries are currently playing their home games in Morocco. But then that comes to Nigeria. You were at the National Stadium, Abuja. You were also at the National Stadium, at the MK Abdullah Stadium in Abuja, and the National Stadium in Lagos. And I saw also you're going through all the 6 geopolitical zones, trying to look at the facilities. How appalled are you, sir, that Nigeria of 2024, 2023, I beg your pardon, there are only 2 standard stadiums in Nigeria? Sports development. How do you intend to address this?
A huge question. I mean, it's. I wish I could ask you, what those 2 standard, playing and stadium,
yes. The Abuja Stadium and the one at Uyo.
It's as bad as you've.
Yeah.
It's as bad as you've said.
Go on, sir. Yeah.
It's as bad as you've said. Incidentally, even the one in Abuja, you find out that the Super Eagles, the male national team, for quite a while hasn't been able to play a game, even in the one in Abuja. I mean, it's a sorry situation. I mean, the experience has been such that it does appear that it is when we win a bid, perhaps to host a tournament, that we now get serious, trying to get our facility, to be in good shape for that tournament. I mean, it shouldn't be the case. I mean, Nigeria is a great country, not just in Africa. And I think that we must get to a point in which at every time our facilities are ready. And our facility, I mean, you talked about 7 African countries having to play their home matches in Morocco. I mean, it's why not saying that? Why not encouraging that trend? Why not encouraging the fact that you should have countries amongst the 54 that cannot play home matches at home because of the lack of facilities? What I'm saying is that while we still have that situation, why don't we have countries also elect to play in Nigeria? I mean, exactly. In itself is a reflection of the fact that even as a country, we also don't even have those facilities. But going forward, I think that perhaps what has been lacking has been the kind of the philosophy, I mean, the orientation, I mean, the understanding of what sports is all about. I think that for too long, therefore, we may have taken sports to just be a matter for recreation, a matter for leisure. I'm glad to report that the National Sports Industry Policy that was adopted by the last administration is fully at play. And this government, the government of our dear President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has committed fully to that implementation. I think that this is one of the missing links that has existed. The fact that, as increasingly, as we drive sports as business, it will become, more and more inevitable and imperative that the private sector begins to play a greater role in terms of our sports development. And that private sector that now plays that greater role, you have corporate bodies and things like that, would now get also involved in terms of the development of our infrastructure. I mean, in terms of even the policy I talked about, which is hinged on about 3 principles of infrastructure, of investments, of incentives. The first and the key is infrastructure. So we're driving, in the course of driving sports as business, I think that the tax for me, the tax for us as a sector and as a Minister of Sports Development is how much and how many partnerships we're able to engender between government and the private sector in terms of the various forms that they can take, in terms of the various PPPs, in terms of all of that, just so that increasingly, because what we find out, what we've met is that even the few facilities developed and owned by government, even maintaining them has remained a challenge. So we're not going to get emotional about this. It's not just maintaining and owning them for the sake of ownership, but how, useful they are, in terms of being able to be available for the use, for the different sports. So all of that is going to take place. I mean, we are now at a point, just a few days ago, the president, laid the estimates of the 2024 budget before a joint session of the National Assembly. In terms of grassroots sports, the ministry under my leadership has also committed to the fact that we're going to see how we can talk to our members in the National Assembly, to get them to appreciate how much it will matter, and it continues to matter to their constituents, that, quick fix, usable sports facilities are provided for them in the different, constituencies that they represent. Whenever any sports facility has been attracted to any of these constituencies, it is been greeted by excitement and a lot of, happiness. So in the main, we think, for example, that having to encourage, massive development of grassroots sports infrastructure that can get, the young men and women to be easily exposed to these facilities back in their various homes is going to be the beginning point. And then having to sustain that in terms of elite level, in terms of the existing stadium, in terms of, having to even develop, some other ones. And I think that there's also a new orientation, a new thinking about even the kind of facilities that are developed. Gone are those days that you simply build a stadium just for the sake of, let's say, sports or football. Today, facilities such as that are turned into sports cities. So that at every point in time, there is also the entertainment component that also has to be incorporated or added, either in terms of the facilities that currently exist or in terms of the new ones we're going to think about. Just so at every point in time, these facilities are fully functional and are fully available and attractive to the, to the greater audience and participation of the people.
Okay, I'm still on this, Honorable Minister. How intentional is the Minister of Sports Development in this, in this area that you just delved on, in terms of capital? When we talk about budget, I think I can say this. I haven't read what you went through. That is your area, budgeting, and the expertise, and get out of it. Capital budget. How much are we committing, or not how much? What percentage are we committing to capital in the next budget? And you just talked about, okay, putting those facilities, meeting your which is still your territory, the National Assembly, talking to the members, which you can interact with, and let them understand how vital, important it is for us to have in each of the local governments, other Bukoda place counties, and whichever is going to be there. So the 2009 budget, sport policy specifically asks for 5% of the federal budget for sports. The latest one also talked about that both at the federal budget, state budget, and the local government budget. Are you willing, sir, to pursue this aspect and look for that money that government, because we're talking about Morocco, talking about Saudi Arabia, talking about facilities, without government spend, of course, private sector must come in, but if government does not show intent, I don't think we're going to have it. Are you willing, sir, to ask the government of federal government of Nigeria to budget at least 5% to sports development so that we can have it, sir, based on what is in the sport policy?
Okay, if you want me to answer it very simplistically, of course, my answer is capital yes. Why not? I'm willing, and I'm already doing so. It's in terms of the various processes of the preparation of the estimates that were laid by Mr. President. I believe that, I engaged, I meet, enough and a lot of engagement, both with the budget office and, and the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning. All of that I have done. But, it's one of two things. The first is that the prospects, the expectation, the policy of having 5%, it's let me say this outright, that by the time you aggregate all the various percentages that are expected from the various sectors, of course, these percentages will always almost be more than 100%. But let's I'm not going to allow you to get me dragged into having to now get very specific about the fact that this is the percentage that we have or we do not have. Because what we have for now, we don't have a budget yet. We have estimates that have been laid before the National Assembly.
Okay.
What I can assure you is that we're going to continue to engage. I mean, the National Assembly is going to invite, the sectors, to go for budget defense and all that. We're going to keep trying to put in, our best effort and trying to see how much our goodwill can also be brought to bear, in terms of the appreciation of what this sector needs. And the hope is that I feel strong that by the time the budget is passed, this government that for the first time has found it, necessary and worthy to, create a separate Ministry of Sports Development. This same government will not just create that ministry for the fun of it, has created it because of what it wants to use it to achieve and how much impact it wants to achieve. And I think that so far, I believe that I've had a listening ear. So far, I can more than say that there is enough will to try to make sure that the situation and the circumstances of this sector, are provided with the necessary change element that is required compared to previous governments and administrations.
Okay, Honorable Minister, we are going on a very short break now. When we come back, we'll take and see if we can take some calls, but that will be just on sport quiz. Any question on sports, when you guys want to call in, if it is not on sports, don't call, but I'm not going to take it, and it has to be precise. A sport question. He is willing. He has been. I say, okay, let me just take this. He has just given us that. He's not supposed to take questions, but we are saying we're opening the lines. You can call, be respectful, and make your calls. Just your questions, very short, 60 seconds, and let it be on sports. We're going on a short break. When we come back, we are still with the Minister of Sports Development. Okay, you're welcome back. We still have the Honorable Minister in the house. I'll call him Joe. And I tell you, this Minister of Sports Development. What we just watched is actually one of our clips on the 28th of May this year, when we had a former sport minister, one of your predecessors in office, and we're talking about the challenges of sports, the funding of sports. And because we found out that there is somewhere that there is some money, the sports lottery fund. There are some in the United Kingdom, I think, both the Wembley Stadium and at the Cardiff, the stadium in Cardiff. I remember England played there, when they were building the Wembley. Most of those stadia and other things were funded by the sports lottery fund in the UK. Right here in Nigeria, we have that. And then that money is lying down there, and sports is not assessing it. We looked at this. Why I'm saying this, Honorable Minister, is that we looked at the budget of the funds in the last 4 years, and in the Ministry of Sport then, before this Ministry of Sport Development, that NYSC gets nothing less than 93% of the budget. Why sports, we're supposed to be the Minister of Sport, was having less than 6%. Right now, we have a Ministry of Sports sports development, and I probably won't be having that orphan thing. But I also, if you have a word to say for your Solomon Dalong, because he just lost his mother on the 31st of December, the last day of the month. He just sent me a message. I just want to. So before you look at that and look at what he said about the sport lottery fund and Avenue for together, do you have a word for Solomon Dalong, the former sport minister, sir?
Of course, my deep condolences to Solomon Dalong, on the death, the demise of the mom. I mean, and I'm going to call him immediately after this program and extend same. I mean, I haven't said so. I mean, I've listened to the comment that you played, that he made about the National Lottery Trust Fund.
Yeah.
I mean, I've also tried to, to confront, the matters relating to that fund. But let me also say this. We don't have a national sports lottery.
Okay.
I mean, and I'm saying this because I like to distinguish between a national, lottery trust fund, which we presently have, and then we also have a national the lottery, National Lottery Commission. We have those presently existing. Part of the funding models or the funding arrangements or the funding ideas, initiatives that the present Ministry of Sports Development, is trying to work on, is on trying to, explore the possibilities of having a lottery trust fund that is specific to sports.
Okay.
National Lottery Trust, National Sports Lottery. I mean, it's when you go to other clients like the UK you mentioned, there's a dedicated, lottery trust fund for sports.
Yeah.
Which is, the UK, sports lottery. I mean, having said so, I'm not therefore saying that we don't have, a right and a claim to the present lottery trust fund, because whereas some years back, when the trust fund was, set, was put in place, there may not have been an appreciation of the kind of role and contribution that sports was going to make, in terms of the development of this trust fund. What I can say is that several years after, the present contribution of sports to that fund is more than any other sector. And I think that the ministry is going to continue to engage with the leadership of the sports, of the lottery trust fund as presently is, and see what benefit we can have of that fund. Because the truth be told as well, in previous years, sports really has never had adequate funding. I mean, just about a month ago, the Guardian carried a front page cover that talked about how lack of funding, was denying the sports, sector and the country of about 500 billion, yearly revenue. I mean, for me, that estimate is very conservative, that the potentials of this sector remain very huge and enormous. And I think that unless we tap into these potentials and actually get them to happen, the country is going to continue to lose. We're going to, continuously explore a lot of, other funding models. I mean, without prejudice to how much eventually gets devoted to the sports sector, the 2024 budget, I need to say this very clearly, that even in those other countries that have been able to get it in terms of, proper sports funding, it's never been left as the exclusive responsibility of government. The private sector has continued to play a very great role. In fact, even presently in this country, the private sector is doing a lot, but I think that we need to see how we can aggregate all of these. There's a lot that is going on in terms of the underground economy, in terms of the operations and the activities of a lot of private players in different aspects of our sports. And I think that it is important that the Ministry of Sports Development gets all of these under its radar in such a manner that we're able to make it, all these operations and all these activities to be of maximum benefit to the growth of the sports sector.
Okay, I have a double-barrel question for you. Our sports development, sir. We have 236 days to the Olympics. We have 41 days to the AFCON. Of course, let's do it again. We saw that. But of course, this is, like you said, measurables, that what you are seeing are results. But then the emphasis, like we said, is our sports development. So the place of the boards of the sport, the federation, of the boards of the federations, of the various sports federations, boxing, athletics, and the rest of them all. Do you, like your predecessors, intend, the elections are coming in, do you intend to say, okay, fine, we'll look at those who are going to sit at these boards, or you are going to allow them to pick, you understand, to choose, who the board members are? In various times, sir, we've seen where you have a board member, the board has constituted, and always say government is not giving us money, government is not giving us money to do, whatever we are doing. Are you in any way, say, by the next elections, in whichever way, that the government or yourself are look at those who are bringing something into the board and not just our board members and waiting for government to provide those. And like I said, do you want us to mention this year, look at successes, at how we achieve what we achieve in Olympics or what we achieve at the AFCON, or you are looking at saying, I am laying the foundation for sports development, sir? Don't be bad. I hope the question is not too long.
Okay, first, in terms of the federations.
Yeah.
If you look at, I have a 6-point agenda. That 6-point agenda has an acronym, WAFER.
WAFER,
The R in the WAFER has to do with the organization of the sporting federations. I mean, we cannot achieve or record any success at all in our sports, in the sports sector without, the proper functioning of the different sporting federations.
Yeah.
So it's, I'm not going to impose in the next round of elections where the various boards of the various sporting federations are going to be put in place. I mean, I'm not going to impose anybody. I'm not going to impose any leadership. But my hope is that ahead of that, we would have been able to come up with some kind of charter of demands, some kind of, it's an agreement, some kind of understanding as to what we expect of, the leadership of the federations to be like. I mean, we're hoping to be able to reform these federations in such a manner that it is easy for them to achieve results for both their federations and therefore for the sports sector. So we, within the first 100 days, we've already had some engagements with the different federations, both as a group and individually. And these engagements are going to continue. And the target of these engagements is how to make these sporting federations, to be functional in such a manner that they're able to record success, for their different sporting federations and for our country. I mean, I have, within the last, 3 months or thereabout, I mean, I've come to a greater understanding of the way these federations are being run. I mean, I've confronted some situations in which you have some of these leaderships not even resident in Nigeria. You want to speak with a particular vice president of one of these federations, and they tell you that he's living abroad, he's staying abroad. We need to be able to, I mean, because these federations, whether government funds them or not, these federations exist because there's a country called Nigeria. These federations, when they go for competitions, they compete as Nigeria. They don't compete as taking people, privately and going to go and do tournaments. And by the way, who has said government has not been funding? Government has been funding federations. The only thing is that this funding may never have been enough. One of the things I assured the federations when I was engaging with them was that we're going to try to look again at this funding to see, how much more we're able to do. So the straight answer is that I'm not going to impose leadership, but I and the Minister of Sports Development and the government is going to be interested in the quality and the caliber of those that want to offer themselves for leadership. We're going to be interested in the program, the development program of those who want to aspire for the leadership of these federations, because what they do continues to have a telling effect in terms of the performance of sports in our country. The other question you asked has to do, I don't know, maybe you need to remind me again.
Okay. No, I was talking about the countdown. 2:32.
Okay, you're talking about the next competitions.
Of course.
You're talking about the next competitions and all that.
Successes you mentioned in terms of competitions or development. I mean, that's the emphasis, which is more. Of course, the measurables are go to the competition. Go on, sir.
Well, and this will not be the first time I'm going to be saying this. And that very early, as Minister of Sports Development, I discovered that we were too driven as a people, as a country. We're too driven by competition, to the neglect of development. And that the outcome of competition is always a function of the kind of developmental initiatives that we put in place. So why not ignoring, why not underplaying the importance of competitions? Because these competitions at the elite level, they win a lot for the country. I mean, each time, the country succeeds in any of these international tournaments or events, it brings a lot of glory. It brings a lot of pride. It brings a lot of recognition, not just to the athletes that have won, but to the name of the country, to our flag, that gets, wasted around. So it's important, and we're going to pay attention. But I think that this attention must not be at the neglect of development. just like you've mentioned, just like I'm Minister of Sports Development.
Yes.
So the task and the challenge for developing sports is going to occupy a very big, very big role, very big importance in terms of the work that I do and the work that the Minister of Sports Development is going to do. I mean, even in terms of these competitions, I mean, I've come to terms and face to face with the fact that on and on, people say that, the preparation for the next Olympics has to begin as soon as the conclusion of the current and the present Olympics.
Yeah.
The question to ask is how much of this has taken place in our own country. I mean, we're preparing for the Olympics coming up in July. And as Minister of Sports Development, I also know, what I met. I also know what was happening or not happening in terms of these Olympic Games. So our tendency has always been to wait to the last minute and then begin to rush over things. My hope is that, we'll be able to provide some kind of change to this attitude, to this tendency, and that, yes, we're going to prepare as much as we can within the limits of the present, the remaining time that we have for AFCON that you've mentioned, which is starting about the 14th of January, and for the All-African Games starting in March, and for the Olympics starting in July.
Yeah.
But soon after the conclusion of each of these competitions and events, what I can assure is that preparation work and development work for the next level and round of competitions is going to start immediately, so that we know how much and how well we can do. You cannot achieve any success. A lot of the outcomes, a lot of the victories that are recorded in all of these competitions are a function of the kind of training, of the kind of preparation that takes place. And I think that I want to place more emphasis on this so that the outcomes in each of these competitions can be such that Nigerians will be happy about.
Okay, we'll still open the lines, Honorable Minister. We'll take some few questions. But let me ask you this: how involved is the Minister of Sports Development in the employment or in the status of the coach of the Super Eagles? Are they involved in the payment of his salaries? Are they involved in his terms of service? Are they involved? The minister have a say in who should be the manager of our national teams, the Super Eagles, the Super Falcons? And then a follow up to that is, apart from the NIS, what will the Minister of Sport Development under your supervision do in order to develop our local coaches to international standard, or at least right now I don't know how many that we have that can even sit on the bench, having the CAF license are supposed to have. But intentionally, apart from the NIS, are we going to have maybe some schools of coaching development all over the country, or whichever? I know it has to do with the funding, which we're talking about. But in these cases, what will the ministry do under the circumstances, to develop our coaches? And like I said, the Super Falcons and the Super Eagles is the ministry involved in not just who is there or how much they are paid or how they have been paid.
Okay, I'll tell you what I met, and I tell you what I've also done, so far. I was given a brief when I became Minister of Sports Development about the fact that the employment of the present Super Eagles, coach, the signing of the contract and all of that took place in my predecessor's office as Minister of Youth and Sports. That means that, the ministry played a role, in that engagement, in that employment. I may not go into the particular details of what that role, was. I also met a situation in which the president of NFF and his team, the secretary general and all that, had come to see me to talk about the fact that my predecessor had assured that the payment of the Super Eagles coach was going to be the responsibility of government, and that after about 12 months into the contract of the present coach, that there were outstanding salaries that had not been paid. I met that. I also, got involved in when the contract had ended with the outstanding, monies not paid the coach, and the fact that, there were some discussions as to what was therefore going to happen going forward. I mean, a meeting took place in my office with the NFF, that agreed to an extension of the contract to allow the presence of Eagles coach, to be able to, sit as coach, and take the national team to the next AFCON that is coming up from middle of January, and then see how well we do in that tournament before determining what then happens to his contract. And we also got involved in renegotiating the terms of the contract, because the present NFF leadership met him were not those that, were not the leadership of NFF by the time the present coach was hired, and therefore all the contracts, they were not part of it. But I think that one of the things that we also achieved was renegotiating the contract in terms of the salary, and then getting the coach to accept a pay cut. All of that, so there is that, relationship. Whereas while the NFF, like every other federation, would like to be allowed, to carry on its activities without much interference, government still continues to play a role in terms of what happens, and therefore that relationship remains, a relationship that, continues to be founded based on some kind of mutual understanding. The fact that none of the federations would be a federation without the country called Nigeria, and that if, for example, in football the Super Eagles don't perform, it is the country's name that goes down, not that of the individual, the president or the secretary general. So all of these, and I think that the hope is that, going forward, we're increasingly going to come into a greater understanding in terms of the fact that when government gets involved, government doesn't get involved because it wants to take over the job of any of the federations or NFF for that matter. It's because government wants to ensure that things happen in the best way that they should happen. So that's it.
Okay, well, we'll go on a short break. When we come back, Honorable Minister, you take the other aspect on what your ministry will be doing in order to develop, our local coaches and up to international standard. Stay with us. It is a Channel Sport on Sunday, and we still have the Minister of Sport Development in the house. Okay, you're welcome back. It's our home stretch now, and we still have the Minister of Sports Development. I will call him Joe, and he's in charge right there. And I tell you this, he's been dazzling us with his ideas, direction that he wants to take sports to. Before we went on break, the lines will be open now so that we can take a few calls, for the minister. It has to be precise, 60 seconds, and then straight to the point. Let me ask you this. I know before we went on break, the question was, what you intend doing or what the ministry is doing in order to to develop our local coaches. You understand? Of course, we know how much we are spending in bringing in experts, foreign coaches, into Nigeria. So I don't know if you can answer, but before you do that, I also have a follow-up. I'll ask the follow-up questions. Is there an interface? This is from an interface between the Ministry of Sports Development and the Ministry of Education. They are the conveyor belts that discovers this. Of course, have the school sports federations and other. Have you been having this interface between your ministry and that of education, sir?
Okay, first, the question about the coaches and all of that. I think that not just about the coaches, but also about our referees. If you remember, the issue of refereeing and the state of our refereeing was one of the early issues that occupied me as Minister of Sports Development when I reacted and responded to the about 80-something number of referees, that CAF had shortlisted for training, in preparation for the next AFCON, and there was no Nigerian. So the state of our referees and then the state of our coaches and then the various training, remain, a cardinal, of cardinal importance to the ministry. Incidentally, the National Institute of Sports, remains one of the foremost institutes that we have for the training of these various cadre of people. And just last week, I led the DG of that institute to a meeting with the executive secretary of TEDFON, although we may have gone with something else in mind, but I think that visit opened a whole lot of opportunities and prospects in terms of training of various cadre and technical people. And I think that we left there with a commitment and determination on the part of the DG of the National Institute of Sports to see how much of this is going to be able to take advantage of. Just so that, like you've mentioned, at every point in time, we can have trained, coaches and referees and all that are exposed to the best quality programs that get them qualified, to undertake and to coach, any team, whatsoever. It's
okay. Before you take your next question,
take the second question about the collaborations.
Okay. Take the collaboration. Go on. Take the collaboration. Take that, sir.
Yeah, the collaborations. Of course, not just with the Ministry of Education, but the Ministry of Sports is going to continue to collaborate with the different other sectors, within, our governance space. I mean, this may not have been reported, but I paid an informal visit to the Minister of Education again that same, last week, preparatory to a formal meeting, because our focus and emphasis on grassroots sports development cannot proceed without having to work hand in hand with the Ministry of Education. Whether you're talking about primary school sports, secondary school sports, or tertiary, school sports and all of that, we're going to, be in collaboration with the Ministry of Education.
Okay, I'm told that we have a Wolafe on the line. Hello, Wolafe. Do we still have him? Oh no, we've lost that. The lines are still open, and then we still have the minister right here in the house. You talk about what the youth team, the youth games which you helped revived is one sector that I want to ask you. Why 15 and not 18? And I'll be capping the age, for the youth teams. Hello, sir.
Well, I think that it is, it's not just about why 15 and not 18.
Okay.
It's about the fact that, the National Youth Games, because of the thrust of those games, I mean, the age that has been captured is what you've just talked about, the under 15 or so. I think that the present Ministry of Sports Development will need to therefore, fill that gap by creating a separate sporting, event, organizing a separate sporting event that targets, the under 18. Because we find out, and you are right, that because there is no sporting event or competition that involves that age category, it continues to be an element in the various attempts at age cheating. Because people who are above 15 or thereabout, who are 16, 17, 18, try to, to cheat in order to be part of the National Youth Games. We're going to create a separate category of games that captures them, in such a manner that makes it have meaning, because there is reason and good reason for that matter for the National Youth Games to cap it at 15 years, at no more than 15.
Okay. Do we have Owolafe on the line? Hello?
Yeah.
Hello.
I'm on the line.
All right.
Yeah, I'm on the line.
All right. Briefly, you can ask your question.
The question I want to ask the Honorable Minister. The question I want to ask. Yeah.
We're having issues with your connections. You can call back.
I'm hearing you well. I'm hearing you properly.
Then go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. The question I want to ask is that about this Nigerian coach. Now,
sorry, Wolafe, your line is not clear. Maybe you can.
I'm hearing you now. I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you properly. Are you hearing me?
Okay, okay. Can I ask your questions? We are not hearing you. I'm not sure. He said, "I'm not sure." I'm not hearing you. Only hearing you is Iran, and we are short of time. Can you ask your question now, please? Okay, I think we've lost. We lost that. Let us, as we are going on the home front. leave this for you, Honorable Minister. What is your vision, for Nigerian sports development? I mean, short in the immediate time now, short term, and in the long term. What is your vision for sports in Nigeria?
Well, I mean, it's very clearly very straight. I mean, it's to get sports to work, to work for us as a country. I mean, sports has worked for other climes that are less gifted. I mean, we got a population of more than 220 million people, and the youth, element component of that population is more than 60%. We got, a very talented population. Therefore, I mean, what sports is doing in other climes, it should be able to do for our country. I mean, I look forward to sports, providing, livelihood, for, an abundant number of our people. I mean, looking, forward to sports, contributing to, happiness in homes. I mean, for us to get sports, for example, to continue to develop, make a contribution, to Nigeria's GDP, like in other countries, and in our country, like in other sectors. We need to, sports needs to, to be able to deliver in terms of, the economy of people. And then we gradually, up to that. I look forward to the fact, for example, that unlike the present situation, including the National Bureau of Statistics, indicates that the contribution to GDP of sports is about 0.4 or 0%. I look forward to sports, the sports sector having to contribute between 5 to 7% of our GDP, and contribute up to between 3 to 4 trillion in terms of the revenues that will be accruable. I look forward to this sector having to be able to retain the sporting assets of this country in such a manner, therefore, that is able to compete very effectively with the rest of the sub-region, the rest of the region, and the rest of the world. I mean, Nigeria, as a giant of Africa, should occupy the commanding heights, of sports within the continent.
Okay. Before we go leave, I want to ask you this. I think I would have asked you this before, and I would blame myself if I didn't ask you. We've got into this quagmire that doping has been an issue. When we try to say, when we win laurels, I mean, the image of the country shines, but then you have these doping issues of athletes over and over and over again. So I want to ask you this double-barrel questions as usual. What are you doing, or what will your ministry do in order to have an anti-doping agency, functional anti-doping agency in Nigeria? And the other one is also the court of arbitration for sports in Nigeria. Is there any way your advisors have chipped in this to you, and what will you do to get these things and bring them on board?
Well, you are right. The issue of doping has continued to dog our sports. I mean, it has continued to blight the prospects and the good name that the country has earned in terms of the laurels it's been able to win. If you recall, as far back as 2018, Nigeria was delisted by the World Anti-Doping Agency. Too bad that about 5 years after that, we seem to be almost in a worst of situation. What I can say, for example, is that I think that these issues, I started confronting them head on, as soon as I became Minister of Sports Development. We are making every effort that we can, making all the progress and working with the compliance committee of the World Anti-Doping Agency. If you recall, it's about a week or so, 2 weeks ago, Nigeria was given, a deadline of 7th or 8th of December to show cause why it do not get delisted and suffer all the consequences of that delistement. I can report, in terms of the progress that has been made so far, that, and I thank the head of the civil service of the Federation, that I had to personally go to see her about a week ago. And before the end of that week, about 6 or 7 people were posted, to the National Anti-Doping Committee that is resident in the Ministry of Sports Development, which has also been one of the challenges. The challenge, as one of them, has been the fact that we don't have the right personnel. We don't have people who are manning that committee, and that we need to have them. Because of the lack of people, we have actually not been able to, to live up to the required numbers of out of competition testing and in competition testing. I can also report that the challenge has also been that of legislation, like you mentioned, and that for the first time, I was able to take a memo to council requiring, the council to approve, the setting up of the agency you're talking about. That memo had some issues, because, council was also concerned with the fact of the proliferation of agencies and how much more bureaucracy is going to be created. And because of that, the conclusion, of that debate was that, the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Sports Development were going to have further engagement. And I'm happy to report that we'll follow that up. I've met with the Attorney General, and the Minister of Justice with my own, technical people and his own, and that discussions are continuing. And I think that the discussions are being given, immediate attention because we need to act on this with dispatch. Let me also say that we've also made progress in terms of trying to get the government, the funding challenge has also been part of it, because lack of funding of the committee has also been part of the problem, and we're confronting this and hoping, working as hard as we can. Even as I speak to you, the staff of that committee have been working through this weekend as they have done in previous weekends and trying to develop our case, just so that by about the 6th of December, we'll be able to see how much case we would have been able to put together and to convince the compliance committee set up by the World Anti-Doping Agency that, we are showing, real commitment and real will to implementing, the requirements of the anti-doping, expectations, and that want to get our country, to be freed of the various doping cases that have, continued to besiege us.
I think that this
in terms of the setting up of the arbitration.
Yeah.
Within the administrative, whatever of the ministry, working with other sporting agencies and other, interested people within the sector, I think that a lot of these are going to be given attention to, because a lot of the conflicts that continue to exist, either within federations or between the various sports and things like that, sportsmen and women, can actually be taken care of by the kind of arbitration that we put in place.
We want to say thank you so much. We'll call you Joe, Senator John Owen Eno, the Minister of Sports Development. We've taken your time, and we hope that when we call you again, we should be able to have you on Channel Sport on Sunday, sir.
It's as much as possible. I think that it's. I'll continue to be available, at least for the opportunity to be able to provide some, education, be able to respond to issues and questions that continue to remain and continue to come, within this sector.
All right.
So thank
you very much, sir. Okay. Tio.
Just quickly, it all boils down to funding.
Yeah.
Everything he talks about boils down to funding, and he's spoken loftily about what he intends to do. Right now, we called for separations of the ministry. We finally got it. Hopefully, we can actually get to work and see changes.
Okay, hopefully, the Ministry of Sport Development is no longer an off one, because we have a ministry of our own. Let's hope that in the immediate future, we are going to have a ministry that is accommodative, that is developmental, and then we take Nigeria to sporting El Dorado. Good living as we go. I'm Ken Ochonogo. God bless Nigeria.